They vanished for 1,500 years. After a death that came in a second, they returned by an astonishing coincidence. A darkness that swallowed the sun and a fear that rotted their souls had gripped them. I'm here not to tell you the ordinary tales of extinction in Pompeii, but much more. The true story of people turned to stone. If you want to witness an event even more brutal than a horror movie, sit back and get ready for this breathtaking 2,000-year journey. Look closely at this photograph. These were ordinary people, known as the 13 fugitives, attempting to escape Pompeii. As they tried to save their lives, a 350°C wind annihilated them all in a single second. Some were frozen in their sleep, some embraced, praying to the gods. So how did they turn to stone? And what did they experience in their last 24 hours? Was this a divine punishment or merely a brutal natural disaster? Pompeii, in 79 AD, was a city of 15,000 people under the Roman Empire, located on the coast of present-day Italy. Life was bustling and prosperous as usual. Thanks to its volcanic soil, its agricultural yield was much higher than other Roman cities, and developed maritime trade practically filled the city with gold. Pompeii, home to Roman nobles' summer villas, was an ideal paradise for holidays and short getaways. Gladiator fights were held in arenas built 100 years before the Colosseum in Rome. Wild parties were thrown in brothels. Slaves fulfilled their masters' most unimaginable desires. People enjoyed themselves in public baths and delighted in shopping in the Forum. Thanks to its wealth and being a gateway to the world, the architecture and art created by the well-educated people of Pompeii were so advanced that they would profoundly influence both European and, centuries later, American architecture. The city had over 100 taverns and inns where sailors and travelers could pass the time. And of course, the most lucrative profession was baking. Look, in this fresco, you see Pompeii's baker, Terentius Nero, and his wife. The scroll held by the wealthy Terentius Nero symbolizes that his wife was his partner in his business, just as in his life. It's clear they had a happy home, but how could they know the great disaster awaiting them? Temples in Pompeii were overflowing with devout Romans. Furthermore, Romans not only believed in gods, but were also deeply interested in black magic. In an amulet found during excavations, a spell cast by one of the women who couldn't share the same man read exactly like this: "Slave of Flamdation Fossilius, I dedicate his face, his hair, his mind, his breath, his vital organs to the gods of hell. So you cannot have him. Let the man hate her. Let his testicles be useless, so that the girl's inside always remains empty." Even though people continued with their daily lives, they were aware that something had been amiss recently. Earthquakes that had continued for weeks began to cause panic in the public. The city's water pipes were damaged, and some of the baths and pools became unusable. And more than half of Pompeii's population, especially the wealthy, had already begun to leave the city. However, no one thought that the earthquakes were caused by activity in Mount Vesuvius, located 8 kilometers from the city and dormant for years. By the time they realized this, it would be too late. Mount Vesuvius is one of the most active volcanoes on mainland Europe, and more than 3 million people continue to live around it. For this reason, it is considered one of the deadliest volcanoes in the world. It also has another historical feature. It was also where Spartacus and his 77 companions escaped and hid. It had been in a delicate sleep for some time. Now, together, we're going to its awakening 2,000 years ago. The first major eruption in the volcano after years occurs on October 24th, 79 AD. Countdown to the apocalypse has begun. The citizens of the city, startled by a loud noise, rush into the streets. For the people of Pompeii, who cannot make sense of what is happening, this is just the beginning. For the crowds gathered to discuss what to do in the face of what they were experiencing, there is still no reason to fear a mountain covered with trees, as you see now. The situation seems temporary. Nevertheless, the eerie spectacle created by the volcanic eruption causes a significant portion of the population to flee the city. When it's 12 p.m., Vesuvius erupts for a second time. However, this is much greater a catastrophe than the morning's eruption. This eruption is so massive that its power is thousands of times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The volcano begins to spew 100,000 tons of ash, lava, and pumice per second. Many house roofs were blown off by the force of the eruption, and people were thrown from their places. Panic begins in the city. A colossal 35-kilometer column of lava and ash particles rose into the sky, creating a terrifying spectacle. Can you imagine the scene? A giant 35-kilometer mass of lava, ash, and rock rising from a mountain. By 2 p.m., the sky was already covered in black smoke, and it was impossible to see the sun. The only thing those who could lift their heads would see was smoke, ash, and rock. The volcano was not just spewing lava and ash. Pumice stones flung from the mountain rained down on Pompeii, forming 30-centimeter piles in the streets. Tens of thousands of kilometers of black smoke created lightning of unimaginable intensity. Imagine the scene. Pumice stones and ash raining down from black smoke covering the sun, and gigantic lightning bolts turning the sky red every second. The people of Pompeii must have thought the gods were in war with each other. That cursed night connecting October 24th to October 25th, we still know of people in Pompeii who thought everything would return to normal. Indeed, those who continued to party in bars met their deaths right there. Their money boxes were still full. Slaves continued to serve their masters, and with pumice and ash piles in the streets reaching 80 centimeters, walking had become almost impossible. It was an unbelievable situation, and yet there were still people enjoying themselves. Perhaps this was their own farewell in a state of accepted helplessness. We will never know. While they continued to entertain themselves, the destructive wave was yet to come. So far, Pompeii had experienced ash, smoke, and pumice rain, but the destructive gas clouds that would deliver the fatal blow had repeatedly crashed against the city walls at high speed and dispersed, giving the people of Pompeii a little more time to survive. But in the final massive wave, a 350 degrees Celsius cloud of fire engulfed the city at 100 kilometers an hour, and the last surviving Pompeians perished without even understanding what was happening. Their death took only a second. In their final moments, they felt nothing and saw nothing. Most of the people we see today, eating, sleeping, embracing, were those who died in this last great cloud of fire. Without even understanding what was happening, they remained frozen in their final positions. They died as a story for us, the generations 2,000 years later. But we know the entire process that occurred in Pompeii, the fear and pain on people's faces, the magnitude of the eruption, minute by minute. This is all because one person who witnessed this entire catastrophe managed to survive: Pliny the Younger. He, along with his uncle Pliny the Elder, rushed to Pompeii as soon as they heard about the eruption and began to record the developments. Pliny the Younger described the event in detail in letters 25 years after the eruption, thus ensuring its preservation to our day. Until 2022, it was believed that the eruption occurred in August, but with joint studies and discoveries made in 2022, we are certain that it took place in October. Not only were the clothes of the recovered bodies more suitable for October, November than August, but the vegetables and fruits sold by greengrocers in the days of the disaster were also autumn produce. With other findings added, the specific date is thought to be October 24th and 25th, 79 AD. The rediscovery of the city of Pompeii, like Herculaneum, was purely coincidental. In 1592, workers digging an underground aqueduct for architect Domenico Fontana's mills struck ancient walls covered with paintings and inscriptions. Yes, this was the lost city of Pompeii. However, it was not given much attention, and excavation work in the area had to wait for another 200 years. Now, be ready, because the information you're about to learn might change your thoughts about Pompeii entirely. You all know about the people in Pompeii who turned to stone. However,
You all know about the people in Pompeii who turned to stone. However, the reason 99% of these people petrified is that archaeologists conducting excavations in Pompeii in the late 1800s poured plaster into holes they made to extract the bodies without disturbing the positions of the bones. So to preserve the positions of most of the people, you see, we fossilize them, not nature. Indeed, out of 1,150 bodies recovered in Pompeii to date, only 106 have been brought to light as casts. The rest were excavated as skeletons because there was no need to cast them. In total, it is believed that nearly 2,000 people died in the Pompeii disaster. The majority of the deceased were elderly and sick, or devoted children who did not want to abandon their families. Also, slaves held by force. Very few wealthy people did not flee Pompeii and died. The Pompeii disaster, in all its aspects, was one of the most dramatic scenes history has ever witnessed. This is clear and unambiguous. However, the disaster left us with the best preserved city of the Roman world, the archaeological site where we can get closest to the world of ancient times. Today, there is no other ancient city in the world as well preserved as Pompeii. We owe this to Vesuvius's ashes covering the city. In other words, we owe it to this disaster. Look closely at this house. Its name is the Villa of the Mysteries. Its walls are covered with Roman religious drawings and the happy days of the family. The last thing left of it was this little girl. And this is the Villa of Diomedes. It's a ruined wreck now, but look at its splendor back then. What remained of it were 36 bodies. In the basement of the house, 18 women and children, likely servants, took their last breaths embracing each other. Life is full of disasters, sorrows, and sadness. Even after 2,000 years, those who experienced all this were people just like us, people with emotions, families who loved each other and had dreams. Many were innocent, many were poor, many were hopeless. This was not a punishment from God. Many of the people God would punish had already left the city. The wicked had won again, and the innocent had died. Isn't life futile? Friends, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you next time.